is up, Hot Take Nation? DRW here, coming to you with a hot take over your not commute, where you're probably home, working from home, if we can call it working, probably dog barking, kids asking for attention, calling customers, certainly in energy, who are saying, yeah, we're not doing anything. We've furloughed staff, we're stacking rigs, we're not doing completions. Concerned about the balance sheet, concerned about bankruptcy. So that's not a lot of fun. But then broadly, not only is our industry been hit with the double black swan, but everyone else has been hit with a black swan 100%. And it's really hard to, even comprehend the level of productivity and demise of previously good businesses. United Airlines, I know all the airlines, but I think they were asking for a $50 billion bailout in the $2 trillion stimulus plan that was signed on Friday. I think the airlines got $38 billion, and United said, well, we're still going to have to furlough people. Yeah, of course, there's no business going on. Nobody has to fly for work. No one wants to go on vacation because all the restaurants are closed, and all the people who could afford to go on those restaurants and they're worried about their salaries. So yeah, every business in America, every business in the world during this quarantine is actually worth zero, which is really where we're going to start today. And I know I'm not the coronavirus expert, but you can't talk about anything in the world without talking about it, because it is that impactful. And I, in particular, think that our politicians are listening to the wrong people. Doctors are awesome. I love doctors. I don't go personally, have never gone, don't like going, don't want to know if I'm going to die. I'll just, wake up, have a lump, dead. The melanoma story. I was very lucky. It was my wife that saw it. I was never going to go. We went and had surgery basically the next day because it was bad. And that hasn't changed my view. My view remains and will always remain. We leave this planet in a box. It's just a question of how and when. And I know that comes across as so edgy and mean and callous, and it's just not. But what I am so incredibly deeply concerned about is what happened with Cheesecake Factory. I love their cheesecake. I don't eat at the restaurant very much, but every once in a while I go for a little walk down 16th after dinner and say, hey, I want a little cheesecake. So you're going to go in there, have a little yummies, and then finish the night off. And Cheesecake Factory, I'm going to give them huge credit. They wrote their landloaders. I think they have 200 stores in America. It's 200 or it's 2,000, but let's say it's 200. They wrote all their landowners and said, we are not going to pay rent in April. And, I posted that on LinkedIn, and some people said, well, how do they not save for a month? Like, how can they have to do this? And to me, the government didn't give them the option to stay open. They said, look, we think it's so important that everyone shuts down that you are going to shut down. I think it's perfectly reasonable. I do not think a tenant of a business should be forced to pay their rent this month. In fact, none of them should, which means that the companies that own the buildings and the persons that own the buildings now can't pay their mortgage, because they don't have any revenue coming in, because nobody has any revenue coming in. So what are they going to do? They're going to write the bank, who now has 0% interest rate because the Fed injected so much money to make sure that things kept on going, that in theory, the bank should say, yeah, all mortgages for every business and all interest on every house is effectively zero interest until we restart the economy. Haven't heard a lot of that. Maybe they've been doing it, but I doubt it. And so the landlord can't pay their mortgage. So in theory, the bank now has an option to foreclose and to take the business or the building from the landowner. And now the banks are going to own them all, and they're going to foreclose. And then all the people at all those companies now don't have jobs. So they've all lost their jobs. They're no longer paying taxes. The taxes, even though we think that the Fed just painted some money, that will have negative impact. But let's just stick with me on this analogy. So taxes stop being paid to governments, which means the municipal bonds that they raised money to do special projects like build schools, build hospitals, now they can't pay those. So now they, as a city, are in default of their municipal bonds, which, yes, the federal government has said they're going to backstop them. But again, like this is how the economy works. So now the city is bankrupt. So they go on an austerity plan, and the creditors, because that's what they do, are going to say, well, you're going to have to lay off half your teachers, half your firemen, half your police, half your hospital workers. You're going to have to shut your schools, half of them, shut your community college, shut the hospitals, and then all those people are now out of work. And so then the city starts dying. People start boarding up houses and boarding up businesses. You go downtown, there's really no one there, not a lot of cars, not a lot of traffic, not a lot of economic activity, not a lot of opportunities. Some people leave the city. Some people can't leave the city, so they just start robbing their neighbor because they need food, and they're worried about their kid. And then their kids join gangs and start selling drugs on the corner, because that's, what people who are depressed do, drugs and alcohol. So we now start selling drugs. There's an increase in crime, and now the city's just a really shitty place to live. And there's no jobs, and there's no economy, there's no society. And then next year, when the COVID-19, because we know that we're not eradicating it, right? We're trying to get a vaccine. It's 12 to 18 months away before we get a vaccine. And in 6 months, when winter comes again, and COVID-19 comes back and people start dying, they go to the hospital and they discovered that actually the hospital was closed. Most people were laid off, and there's no one there to help them. So they die anyway. Like, I don't think that people really have thought through the impact. And people say, oh, David, you're only talking about money and economics. And like, you sound cold, you sound callous, you sound all these things. Guys, we live in a society, and a society is a layering of many, many, many systems. The education system, the health system, the infrastructure system, the electrical system, the sewer system. The whole interplay of our entire society is a coalescing of systems and people who abide by the rules. And if we think that we're far away from what happens in Nigeria or Colombia or the Bahamas, where warlords and drug lords carry weapons and shoot people and recruit people into gangs because there's no other opportunities, they don't want to do that. They all want to be in the US because we have a vibrant economy. You have a chance to be born here, have no money, be on free and reduced lunches at school, get a free scholarship to go to college, and then be the CEO of a company. You have that opportunity in the US, but we are killing it by shutting it down. And let's now everyone think. So you might be in favor of the lockdown. You might be agreeing with me. If you're in favor of the lockdown, you've probably turned the podcast off, because honestly, I would never have said this a couple months ago. I'm now watching Fox News. Like, how weird is that? I'm a socialist Republican. I generally watch CNN. I can't even watch CNN anymore. It's the worst fluff of political rhetoric ever, and it drives me crazy. And I'm now watching Fox, and I'm hearing what they're saying, and I'm going, yeah, I agree. And do you understand how scary that is? Because like, in every normal situation, everyone should be watching Fox News going like, are you kidding me out here? But that's where we've come to, because the president is right. We have to go back to work. And yes, there is a chance that more people will die. And yes, there is a chance that the hospitals might be overwhelmed, and that might be a problem. But we're not using the correct denominator to calculate fatality rates. We are not. I don't know what the right number is, but the Imperial College guy came out and said, I misunderstood how many people actually had it. I have 10 friends personally who have all gone to the doctor saying they feel really sick, they want to get a test, and they're told they're not allowed to get a test. I have other friends who found out they had it, but it took 10 days to get the test done, and by the time the test came back, they were better. And most young, healthy people who don't have pre-existing conditions are going to get over it fine. They're going to feel it, they're going to stay home, and then they're going to go to work. Those people need to be back in the workforce, because if we don't have tax revenue, and we don't have businesses, and we don't have opportunities, we don't have health care anyway. So I think that the Cheesecake Factory is the canary in the coal mine, where they are saying we're not going to pay our rent. And as soon as that economic pain goes through the landowners and the paychecks stop coming, which they should be coming April 1st, and a lot of people in America aren't going to have it. 3.28 million people went on unemployment in 1 week. Highest ever by 5 times. Highest ever. Goldman Sachs thought it would be 2.5 million. I was like, it's going to be way more than that. People are like, no, that's impossible. It can't be that bad. It is that bad. That is where we are at. And so for those who are in favor of the lockdown, I really honestly care about lives. But we have to think about the greater good. And we are at risk of collapsing everything that we have ever accomplished in this country and degenerating back into the gangs of New York style with no laws, no rule of force, warlords and drug lords running everything, and nothing we can do to fix it. So, guys, back to work. Let's go. Let's talk about energy. Energy is, it's brutal. Oil is 21. I was on CNBC, as you guys know, 2 weeks ago and said, oil will continue to drop until the price is low enough that producers have to shut in. And I get a lot of people who text, and I think they're intelligent texts. What happens if we damage the wells? Okay, so when we have frac hits, right? We've had frac hits for the last year, parent-child. We've been talking about that nonstop before the coronavirus. None of those issues go away because of the coronavirus. And so companies were shutting in the offset wells for 2, 3, 4 weeks while they were fracking their new cubes to help retain reservoir pressure and limit the damage of parent-child relationships. So there is evidence of where wells go down for 30 days and come back on. Are they damaged? I have not seen cases where en masse they are damaged. Okay. Number 2, 4 million of the 13 million barrels a day that is produced in the United States is from wells on in the last 365 days. You can't tell me that you can't choke them or flow them at a lower rate or shut them in 1 week and on 1 week, off 1 week, on 1 week, and manage that. Or just shut them in if they're flowing wells. A lot of the wells in the Delaware Basin are flowing wells. Just shut them in. You don't need it. Like, they're going to be fine. And then why are we completing new wells when there's already no oil, like no storage to put those wells in anyway? Why the frac count is not 0 is absolutely beyond me. That's my view on shut-ins. It's not that hard. In terms of leases, call the landowner and said, hey, we can sell oil for 20 and sell it to some guy that has a storage tank for 20 who's going to resell it to the market at 30 and they're going to get a $10 profit. Or we can leave it shut in. You can give me a 6-month reprieve on my lease and then you'll get more money when we turn the wells back on. That sound good? So don't give me all the excuses as to why we can't renegotiate, why we can't flow a well for a week, a month, a day, a month, a day, a week, choke, restrict, don't fix. There's so many creative ways to do this that doesn't damage the reservoir. Do that. Because we are oversupplied by 20 million barrels a day. 20 million barrels a day in the world is not being burned. The reason oil works and gold doesn't is because we actually burn the barrels. And if we don't burn the barrels, they go in storage tanks. And then other people resell them for profit, while the company and the landowners and the royalty owners and the governments and the schools that benefit from that don't make any money on that. That is why we must shut in. Number 2, if we shut in and we actively shut in, Russia and Saudi also have nowhere to put their oil. They are going to shut in. They just want to know that they won. And we are in a fist fight with Mike Tyson. We are going to lose. We have the highest cost of marginal production in the world, higher than Russia, higher than Saudi. And we can talk about their social programs, but they are willing to fight this because they said that they would. Therefore, they have to shut in. But they don't want to shut in until we shut in. And they don't want to shut in until we say we will never grow again and we will shrink. Thank you very much. Please don't kill us. And then the world, and I mean economically, not physically. And then we'll be better. So that's where the world is at. Not surprisingly, rig count dropped 44 for oil and I think 4 for gas this week. I would not be at all surprised to see rigs drop another 100 next week, another 100 the week after, another 100 the week after. I think rig count's going to less than 200. I think oil is going to sub 15, sub 10. At that point, the pain will be enough that people shut in. In Canada right now, you're basically free with the differentials in trucking and rail and all that stuff. So Canada's going to shut in a couple million. The U.S. has already probably shut in some, and they just haven't announced it. Saudi's probably shut in some. Russia's actually probably shut in some. So I think good things are coming down that, but until we shut in, prices will fall. Until we stop spending any CapEx, we die as an industry. It's just supply demand. It's just supply demand. Now, what I will say is that this builds a very strong bull case for natural gas, because if we decline 4 million barrels of oil, that 4 million barrels comes with probably a 4,000 to 5,000 GOR gas, which means that we're in the 15 to maybe 20 BCF a day of associated gas, just natural decline. Because of the oil decline, the gas goes away. Now the gas market is more balanced. And think about all of the impacts of globalization that's occurred. Globalizing supply chain just in time, having factories all over the world, traveling all over the world. And then a little coronavirus is going to have such a deep impact on globalization and people's views. Do you want to travel in the U.S.? Yeah, probably. I want to travel in the U.S. and Canada. Because as North American, it's, the virus, we're on one continent, we're all going to do it. Are people going to stop traveling internationally as much? Possibly. Are people going to move supply chains home and be willing to pay a little bit more for goods like they weren't before, but now they are? Yeah, maybe. Do we see benefits from natural gas CO2 reductions? A lot of coal-fired plants, I think we've talked about in Asia, 74% of the coal-fired electric generation in the world is in Asia. So if we want to impact climate change, which has been a topic that no one has even mentioned in the last 6 weeks, but if that was a goal, natural gas does it. And if oil is declining and we don't want to use Saudi and Russian oil because we're very upset with them, do people start buying more electric vehicles or more fuel-efficient vehicles that use natural gas and wind and solar to charge the electric? Yeah, I think that this might hasten the decline of demand for oil more so than it would have before. It certainly has changed the risk premium of investing in oil assets. And the big benefactor is natural gas, because now it doesn't have to compete with associated gas. And there's a chance that we could see 250 or 275 natural gas, which the Appalachian players that are trying to fill firm transport are just jumping for joy. The best thing that ever happened to them was the Saudis fighting back against the Russians. So we've covered it. We've covered rent. We've covered the economics. We've covered coronavirus. We've covered energy. Like always, I want every individual to stay safe, be safe, stay away from the coronavirus, be healthy, keep your families healthy. Be good, follow the quarantine. I promise I am following. There's definitely a lot of social distancing. I'm not going to lie. A lot of social distancing, a lot of family time. And I'm certainly not getting within 6 feet of anybody else. So I guess I am following that. And until next time, have a great day. Bye for now.